Hi, this is Keiko from Brooklyn Shoe Space. How are you guys? Today it's a little earlier than normal. It's 12 o'clock here in New York. In Barcelona, it's 6 p.m. Faye Sevilla Smith of Sevilla Smith Shoes has graciously stayed in her studio so she can show us her studio and join us for shoe talks. So it's been almost a year since quarantine. I hope everybody's doing great. Okay, let's see. Matt Taylor Leather. Hola. Hi. Oh, she is on. So let me just invite her really quickly. Hi, how are you? Oh,
I'm good. Let me turn up my volume. I've never done this before.
oh, this is so great. So good to see you in person. Oh my
Happy
gosh.
birthday,
Oh,
Rico.
thank you. 40, wonderful. I'm in
Yeah,
my 40s.
very
Oh.
good. Very good.
I'm loving it. But yeah, it's been so long since I saw you in person. I guess a couple of years ago I visited your
Yeah,
space, but I see so many
cheers.
new lasts and everything going on. So I guess
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back to talk about, how it's been already almost a year,
I
since we
know.
quarantined and like,
Here it started March, Friday the 13th. So it's really easy to remember what day that was when
yeah.
everything shut down.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Ours was like on Monday, the 15th or something. Yeah. So so what have you like, how have you adjusted to this times? And I know it's already been a year, so I feel like I don't need to maybe go over all this, but I kind of do want to hear
yeah.
about like,
Well,
how
no,
are
I
you
mean,
doing?
it's good because I think everyone is going through it in a different way,
Yeah,
and people in different countries are going through it in different ways. And for me, I'm in Spain, and so it was obviously very hard hit.
yeah,
But culturally, there's different ways in which they deal with things.
yeah,
So there was, in the very beginning, there was a big lockdown and everyone stayed home. Um, I stayed home, so it gave me a chance to actually do more creative work
okay.
than the kind of nuts and bolts of every day in the workshop. And so there was a lot of time where kind of ideas were simmering.
Brewing. Yeah,
So as you can see, the past year we released so much stuff, and
yeah.
part of it comes from all of that
Time.
kind of like
Yeah,
creative angst of not being able to come in. Now we were actually allowed to go into the workshop here, but I was taking it where I was mostly at home so that Joe can be at the workshop working on shoes because we were still trying to fill orders at that
right,
time.
right. And so it's like one person working in the studio and one you were at home, so that to give
Yeah.
yourself space, right?
And in Europe, it was crazy because I was actually in Milan for the leather show in February,
Yeah.
and Milan shut down maybe 1 or 2 weeks after I was there. And afterwards, it was it had a huge impact on all of our leather sources because they were mostly
Italy,
in Italy,
right,
and everyone was at Linea Pelle together.
right.
So, and the hardest hit city, I think, in the beginning for Spain is Igualada, which is a tiny little town, pretty
Yeah.
small town, but their main industry is leather.
Oh
So
no.
they were
Uh-huh.
all in
In
Milan, and then
right.
everything came back to Igualada. So it was really tough for them.
Wow. Wow. That's so crazy. So when you went to the leather show and then back, like, so did you have all the delays as well in the leather?
Um, there was the delays, of course, but I let myself kind of um, when I see leathers there, I let myself percolate a little bit, because if not, I will literally just blow everything on everything I saw. So I really have to kind of like come back, think about what I liked, think about what needs to go away before we get it.
Yeah.
And luckily, we have a really great relationship with a lot of our tanneries. And so, you know, they'll allow me to order a very small quantity at a time, and
Right.
you know, alter it to whatever might need that might not even be in stock, or you know, where we can have conversations with, you know, the tannery guys versus the
Right.
salespeople to try
Right.
to develop something new, which is always an interesting conversation, because they speak to me in Italian and I speak to them in Spanish, but the salesperson talks to me in English. So, but whatever it is, we always come up with something great, but it's always kind of, you never quite know if it's going to turn out the way
You imagine
the way
it?
you
Yeah.
hoped.
Yeah.
But these guys have been doing it for like hundreds of years.
Wow.
They're
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
companies, so they
Yeah.
really know what they're doing. So yeah, there were definitely some delays. But overall, I think footwear has been so impacted, especially a lot of bigger brands,
Yeah.
that it, you know, a lot of them doing less actually made it so a lot of tanneries were willing to, and factories were willing to accommodate us more. And we're now like, you know, one of the places that we source our components from, they're in Portugal. And, you know, this time it was more like, hey, look, we have the room right now to do a small run. So if you want, you
Order
know,
it now. Yeah.
order it now. So in that way, it's been good. And our community, the Cecilia Smith community, is really a community. So in the beginning, when I said like, I have no idea what's going to happen, we have some ready-made shoes and we're just going to put it out there and sell them. And we hope that we can have enough revenue to kind of keep us going for a while. It was great. Like everything sold out in, I think, 4 minutes. So then we can have a little bit of breather and be like, okay, we don't have to produce as much right now, you know, like we can have a little bit of buffer time. So
and health
that
first.
really helped.
That's good. Oh, that's good. Oh, can we go back a little bit in time, back to your childhood? Like, how did you start shoemaking? And did you always love shoes? I know, you know. You've dropped a little bit of stories, couple, you know, here and there, but I would love to hear the whole story.
Yeah, no, my dad is actually a leather maker, but he didn't really start getting into leather until after, you know, I lived with him in the Philippines, and then I moved to my mom's house in California, and he didn't really get started until after I left. But obviously, you know, he was always very like creative and very, you know, he didn't really believe in toys. Like, I don't remember ever having any toys as a kid. It was always just like, here's a paper, or there's a tree, go chop something down, figure it out. So I got to be kind of like a little bit more creative as a kid. I remember even someone gave me a Barbie, and he was like, and I was like, I need more clothes for the Barbie. He was like, no, you don't. Figure it out. So then, you know, the Barbie always had paper clothes and clothes made out of toilet paper or aluminum foil. So that was definitely, I think, a really good influence. And then afterwards, after I graduated from college, I went to, I worked in the film industry.
Okay. So did you study film fashion?
I studied film theory. I had gone to Berkeley for film theory and actually NYU for graduate school, and I wanted to be a film critic. But I could also sense that was kind of going away as a job. You know, before you didn't the only previews you saw were in a movie theater, really.
Yeah,
So you counted on film critics to tell you what a movie was like.
Yeah.
I could sense I was going away. That's how old I am, right? And then, so I after college, I moved to LA, and I happened to start. This woman found my my resume. Isis Musenden, who the Musenden is actually named after, but she ended up designing Narnia and a lot of great movies, like very creative, and she kind of just took me under her wing. And so from there, in the film industry for wardrobe, you're working with a lot of different craftspeople.
Yeah.
So it's shoemakers, but it's also milliners, it's seamstresses, it's armor makers, it's weavers, people that do beading, anything. So I had a pretty good concept of a lot of different crafts from that.
Right.
But also you learn after 18 years of doing that, you have an aesthetic style, but you kind of put your ego aside because it's about making sure that the character is right, not necessarily that that they're the most beautiful. It has to be right for the character. So those things have really helped me with design because then I have to think about people and what works for them, what works for their lives versus kind of like just designing for what I want to do. And it was an exercise, definitely a discipline to get to that point. But
from all the crafts that you've been exposed to there, why or how did you choose shoes?
Honestly, because a lot of shoemakers in LA in the film industry were retiring. And no one was really picking up, like there was getting to be a point where just like, what if Fabrizio dies? Like who is going to make, the robot looking shoes that we need for the next movie? And who are they teaching? And we didn't have a lot of access to schools like yours. You had to be, there was none. You had to be full on learning footwear, which was often geared towards factory making shoes, more like mass production and versus finding some artisans. So a lot of the shoemakers in the film industry back then were actually people that moved from Mexico, from Italy, from Argentina, but there wasn't a lot of people that were doing it that were learning in the US. So I don't know. I didn't think that it was going to be shoemaking, what I was going to do. I was walking around Barcelona and I just kind of stumbled into a store and I was like, oh, wow, these shoes are they're special. What's going on? And I looked and I could tell from the back that he made I'm like, did you make the shoes? And he was like, yeah. So I left and then I just kind of went around the corner and I came right back and I was like, you know what, will you teach me? And he was like, sure, show up on Monday. So, and he's this Italian guy who had been making shoes for a while. And then I just showed up on Monday. He was sitting there. He was like, I didn't think you were going to show up. And I was like, well, I'm here. And then I showed up like every day for a while, all day long. And so I learned to make shoes from him in Spanish, but by the end of the day, he would start speaking Italian, and my brain would hurt so bad because I couldn't, it's like I can speak some Spanish, but I don't necessarily know what a welt is in Spanish. Like it's not It's not something you learn. And so I learned from him. And then I was like, you know what? I need to really, I want to do this. I want to do this instead of making movies. And I decided, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to be able to make shoes all day long. If I can't make shoes all day long, then what business do I have trying to be a shoemaker for a living? Because I need to be able to do it.
Right.
And with my background in film, I always handled the money part. And so I kind of started from being a consumer and thinking about how much money I think I would pay, and started designing things from there, because there's nothing less sustainable than doing a business that you're losing money at. It's just, there's no way to continue it. You can make the most beautiful shoes. If you can't actually pay yourself a wage, you can't, it's not a viable business that you can continue.
Right.
And so
you trimmed down, or how did you, so when you were learning, you would learn like traditional shoemaking, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it was more traditional. Yeah.
And for how long? Like for like about a year, half a year?
So from there, I just, no, it was immediate. I learned in the summer, and by fall, I said, I don't want to do movies anymore. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm burnt out. Like, I think the last job I was doing, starting to do shoes, and then I was also doing Rocky 6 or one of those at the same time. And I remember sitting there watching them, do the boxing scene for like the 7th day in a row. And I was like, this is killing me. This is really killing me. I can't like watch them do the same scene over and over again. So then I was like, you know what? If I can design and make 50 shoes in 50 days, then I can start a business. And so I started with like a materials budget.
Okay.
So then that was, a lot of research to find out how much things cost, because then it was kind of going to dictate what the labor time was.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then I was like, okay, so I need to be able to complete a shoe in X amount of time. So I'd sit there, I'd make the patterns. I wouldn't count that as part of it, but then I would start making, and I would make and make and make. And if I got to a certain point, and if I couldn't complete a pair of shoes, I knew that those shoes, I could sell them, but I would just lose money.
Right.
So I was like, I didn't have that privilege to do that, because I had a kid, and like, if I was gonna not work on film, and I need to figure out a way to contribute still to education and all of that.
Yeah.
So I did that. So I would start so many shoes, and would get to a certain point, and I was like, nope. Or I would make shoes, and I put on my Instagram. They like, we want to buy that, and like, sorry, not for sale, because I can't complete it in the time. And shoemaking is a craft that, it can take days and weeks. We share our workshop with Krisha, who's actually also one of our shoemakers, but she's been working for, can I say other brands name? John Long. For 45 years or 42 years, a long time.
Yeah.
And the amount of time it takes to complete a shoe like that. They sell them for what, $4,000, $5,000.
Right.
But it really takes that much time.
Yeah.
To finish, and that much skill.
Yeah. How did you pare it down? So like during this design process, you made it. So did you like, okay, I'm going to take out the lining. I'm not going to sew.
Yeah.
What is maybe?
Well, one of the things I told myself was I needed to design within my skill set. Like, I was very aware of the fact that there are certain things that I don't like to do. Like, I'm not geared for, after 18 years in wardrobe, I knew that I am the worst sewer because I have zero patience. So I knew that stitching was not going to be part of the shoes, because my patience isn't there.
Okay.
And I also took a look at my own feet and what my feet needed.
Yeah.
And I started looking at kind of the scars on my feet. By scars, I
Yeah.
just mean things like
Yeah.
corns or blisters
Yeah.
or calluses.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at shoes, and I literally cut open a few pairs of shoes to see, like, why is that? What is happening? And so that's when I settled on trying to make shoes without seams, because I found out from my feet that seams were the culprit with a lot of what was wrong with my feet. And then, you know, also I started looking at leather characteristics.
Yeah.
And that, you know, the top grains of leather are meant to repel, and the bottom fleshy grains are meant to extract. Like, that's just the natural kind of movement or the breathing of leather. Yeah. So that's kind of why I started with trying to make as breathable a shoe as possible.
Did it take a long time to find like the right leather for that? Like,
absolutely.
Thickness.
Because everyone, when they hear you make shoes, they want to sell you a much thinner leather, types of leathers that are really great for stitching, for patterns that you don't need the stretch, because you might have a thermoplastic, you know, heel counter or something like that. But so a lot of times when I would source, I didn't actually want to tell them I was making shoes.
Right.
And so sourcing was difficult. I was doing all this from Philly.
Right.
Sourcing was really difficult from there. A lot of the leather people are vendors of other people's leather. So I couldn't really get to the people who can give me the characteristics of the leather that I wanted. They were there to sell great leather, but they couldn't help me figure out or develop my own kind of leather. So from there, I had all these different parameters that I needed, but then it's like, how do you design a shoe with all these parameters? So then I started looking at historical footwear, and then I was like, wait a minute, a lot of what I'm asking for went back, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. People had one pair of shoes. Yeah. They needed their shoes to be breathable, because socks were also something that, you know, you didn't have a lot of. So then I started looking at the materials that they use, a lot of historical research before I actually started designing. So that's kind of how we got to to where we are.
And then how did you go from like one person to how you have now, and why did you choose Barcelona now after Philly?
Well, the goal before was just for me to be making shoes out of my little attic, and to be able to be home with my son, but earn enough money to send him to school and contribute financially. That was the initial goal. Yeah. And so I opened a little Etsy store, and then kind of within, I would say, a few weeks. Yeah. I think it was Elle magazine or something picked me up. Like it went kind of bananas from the beginning. Which is when I met you, because then you started helping us make shoes, because then we got a big order. You know, I received first Elizabeth Suzanne ordered our shoes personally, and she loved them, and then she approached me to ask if I would make Elizabeth Suzanne shoes. Yeah. I was so self-conscious about the whole thing, because first of all, at that point, I'm like a one-person operation. I don't want to say no, but at the same time, I was just like, this is way too big. So I said yes, that we would do it. And then started getting help from you, and then my shoemaking teacher actually started working for us. So it kind of expanded really quickly. And then at a certain point, Etsy put us on something which was then, maybe 4 months worth of orders. We got it in like 4 days. So then it was,
blown
I
up.
had to expand very quickly.
Right.
But luckily, my training in film, because with film, you literally create thousands of wardrobes in weeks.
Right.
Like you get used to that kind of pace. So it was actually not a difficult transition for me, because then I just had to, figure out how to do everything. And I was doing everything, I was still committed to like, I was going to go to Barcelona every summer and then Philly. So then it was like a lot of logistics and trying to keep track of everything.
Right.
But yeah, it just kind of grew very,
very
quickly.
And then, so back when you had this 4 months worth of orders in 4 days, how many pairs were you making at a time, a week? Like what was the, like, say, wait time for the clients? It is made to order.
It is made to order, and we have so many styles and so many leathers, and so that's just a lot of different types. I think we still got people their shoes within 6 weeks.
Wow, that's great.
So that was that. Yeah, so I think it was still within 6 weeks.
Can I ask?
So, but
how many styles did you start with? What was your first babies?
The very first baby is actually the Sandy, which it's this one. This isn't quite finished, but you can see what it is. But it was my first design, but also even now, 6 years later, it's our bestseller.
Yeah.
And so that one was the first shoe we came out with. And my Etsy shop in the beginning was so silly because it was like shoes would just be lasted, so like they would look like this, like with the nails. And I would just have a picture and be like, we'll make it. We'll finish it for you and make it in your size. But if someone would order it, then we would make it. So we probably started off with nine designs.
That's a lot though, yeah.
Yeah. And so out of like maybe the 50 that I started off, the first design was the Sandy. The second one was the Terry Lynn, which is also maybe our second bestseller. And then the Danthu. So definitely the things that I tapped into in the very beginning have continued to be our best sellers. So, what's difficult about that is then it kind of dictates the designs you do now. So there's a lot of things that like happen in my head and I have to be like, but does that make sense for, when you have Sandy and Terry Lynn over there staring at you, like, does it make sense for that family of shoes?
Right.
So the brand didn't really develop until after, it kind of built on itself. Yeah, versus like I had this idea and wanted, it's like I started with 1 and 2 and 3, and then it kind of everything kind of just grew organically.
Right.
But it was it was quite a bit of shoes in the beginning, and I was trying to make a lot of things out of my little attic. And so it was like playing Tetris. We'd have to move, like, okay, we're cutting today. So everything would be cleared, and then I cut everything, and then we're lasting. So then everything gets shifted, and like making shoes on literally one of those TV trays, so I learned to kind of pare down the tools that I needed really, really early on. I didn't have the space to.
Right. Well,
As I
speaking
grew, I didn't have the
Mhm.
space to grow.
Yeah, I want to know a little bit about the tools that you have. Speaking of
Hmm.
tools, and what's your favorite hand tool that you have?
My favorite hand tool, which is really the only tool I can use, or is of course my lasting pincers, which
Yes,
have like these were the ones I learned to make shoes on,
that's
and they
cool.
have like a wider
Why?
nose, which for us works really well because we work with thicker leathers and we really need to last the stretch out as much as possible. So, you know, this works well. Yeah, it's kind of falling apart, but then I just keep wrapping it and wrapping it.
That's
But that
love
one, of course, I can't live
without. Yeah,
without.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
And
yeah. Do you have
and
also
then this
knives
one,
too?
um, my knife situation is really kind of bad. Like I used to have a really great French curve knife that I learned on. And I would I've stabbed myself with it
Oh no.
because before we used to trim every sole, we used to trim every
Right, right,
heel
right.
stack that we were
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
And so it was a lot and I wasn't actually like sharpening it that well. So it was really, really bad. But so that has gone away
Yes.
now for other knives. The other tool that I use a lot of that other people may not is these like springy scissors
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I was finding when I was using that you know French knife,
Yeah.
I would end up sometimes going a little too much. You know, it was like
Mm,
it would be really sharp, and I would and all of a sudden I've trimmed off too much that can't get enough underneath the shoe. So then I started using these, and because then I could just cut and it keeps kind of bouncing
back.
open.
Yeah.
So now I use that
hmm And
part of
you
it.
you don't use any heavy machinery? I
No,
Yeah.
not really. I mean, the heaviest machinery is probably, I don't know if you could see it, but it's probably that. Okay.
That one. Oh, that's sole press.
Yeah, so that's my sole press. Um, and yeah, it's just basically a balloon in
Yeah.
between two pieces of metal, and then we
Yeah.
kind of pump it up with a bike pump.
Uh-huh.
And
Wow,
because
wow.
a lot of fatigue happens, when you're like hammering that sole
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
over and over. And I was
Over.
actually finding that sometimes that bounce wasn't
In
it wasn't keeping the sole adhered to the shoe as well.
mm,
So this one, we can put the shoes in,
and
pump
squeeze
up the
it.
balloon underneath, and it just kind of,
Sit there for
you
a
know,
bit. Yeah.
sit there for a bit until everything dries.
Right.
So that's as kind of heavy as it gets,
That
other
is
than the last,
amazing.
which are like
Yes.
2 pounds a
Yeah.
pair.
It's a workout.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, do you think you can show us your space? I mean, it's so much bigger
Um,
than your attic that you were talking about initially.
yeah, much
Yeah.
bigger. Let me just switch the camera. Okay.
Yeah.
So this basically is the space here.
Oh, it's so nice.
Um,
And
so
this area is also, there's a lot of shoe stores also nearby.
mhm. It's basically Elborn is the neighborhood for kind of
Mm-hmm.
artisans.
Mm.
So this is the oldest part of Barcelona.
Wow.
So
Mm-hmm.
this here, the space I'm in is, and you can see there's all these newspapers up from I don't know where.
Oh.
I don't know when, like some
Uh-huh.
are, I think, 1930s.
Uh-huh.
We're kind of open to the elements there.
Oh, wow,
But
wow.
I I think this was built in 1350s.
Wow.
So really, really old. It was the stable that, carriages would drive into
Yeah.
before they go upstairs. So that's that. The walls are old and crumbling. You have these old beams in there. This is Krisha's work table. And this is, she is a master shoemaker. So that's her medallion there.
Uh-huh.
Joe is over here
Uh-huh.
with his lineup. We have some of our components there. This is where we glue. I get really kind of jealous because whenever I look at other people's workspaces on Instagram, it's so beautiful and clean. And ours is not,
well, it's a workshop,
like that. There's the photo booth that everything happens in.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And there's our leather.
Wow, you have so many.
Yeah, and then all these hanging things are all the bags that are going to be released at some point. But
wow, look at the last. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are all our last. It's
storefront, so people do walk in and just kind of browse and
we always have the gate kind of halfway down because we're not open to the public at all. So so we don't, just because we find that it's very distracting. It's hard to go from making shoes to stopping and making shoes to stopping.
Yeah.
And also we're right by the Picasso Museum.
Okay.
So there's a lot of tourists that come by who, they might come from places that doesn't have shoemakers. So, they kind of just want to come and hang out. So we're not actually open to the public.
Yeah. Well,
especially now. Yeah.
Definitely. But the gates are beautiful. So they can actually just stand outside and watch if they really wanted to, which.
Yeah. So sometimes we're like monkeys in a zoo, especially because like this little area here by the window is my little shoemaking spot. And so sometimes people are just,
watching you. You're like like an aquarium, like a fish bowl,
Yeah. So it's fine, we just like it, because the window doesn't actually go all the way up to the ceiling. We can hear everything they say.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
must be wonders for people. People must just be like wondering what's going on in there,
Yeah. And the most recent right now is like, you can see we have those vessels that I was making. Those have really intrigued people. Like, they don't know what they are. They're like, it's ceramic, but it looks like leather. And how do they do that? No, they're a leather place, but like, do you think it's soft? Like they can't quite figure it out. So that's been, they want to touch it, but like they can't come inside. And so they kind of just have to, look at it from the outside.
Somebody asked, after COVID, do you offer a shop tour per appointment?
We actually don't, partly because like, Krisha is, up there in age, and we're pretty protective about making sure that, and also she doesn't want to deal with like the public. She's been doing this for 45 years. She wants to sit down and do her work. Yeah. And it's really like, we have like so many nails on the floor, like hammers, and like it's just not a very safe place for visitors. Every once in a while, if there's a customer in town, we'll go through our leathers upstairs because we have so many, to talk about which leather they want to pick or whatever. So every once in a while we'll do that, but we tend not to.
Right.
And I don't know how much longer we'll have this space. It might just go back into my living space again. So if that's the case, then yeah,
Yeah, not much. Yeah, right.
yeah.
Got it.
So and moving back into my home space can happen any minute,
Right.
So it's
Wow.
just a matter of like, if we move and we find a place,
Right.
but we really try to make sure that we have a lot of stuff now, but we try not to have
Too much.
too much. The
That's
idea
smart.
is to like
Keep it
not
small.
accumulate
Yeah.
a lot.
Oh my goodness, tell me about it.
Yeah.
It gets
Totally.
really hard to move. But
I know you just moved. So like, and you're just like, what am I doing hanging on to so much stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of shoes now again, I want to hear like, so design process you shared with us a little bit. Do you usually sketch first and then make a pair for yourself, or you test it, wear it a little bit?
No, I always sketch first. And from sketching, then I'll start to make a pattern. Unlike a lot of other companies, like we really stick to our last. Like we've had the same last for 6 years. Like a lot of people change, toe shape, they change this or heel height. And for us, it's like I picked what I thought was a natural kind of flattering shape.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I kind of know our last well enough that I can go off of another pattern to make a new pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to, I remember in the beginning I used to tape up every last like so much.
Yeah.
And then now I kind of just don't. I can take a pattern and kind of like fudge it or tweak it.
Yeah.
Also because we don't put a lining in our shoes, our patterns have to be a little bit more flexible because the leather, depending on which leather you're lasting, it will stretch.
Right.
So the pattern needs to be where if it stretches a lot, it's fine, you can trim it off. And if it doesn't stretch enough, then you know where you can pull it to get it to the right shape. So given that, it actually makes pattern making sometimes a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
But because we stick with the same shoe last, I can,
know it all. You know it well.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like your shoemaking and your methods are not conventional, and that's the special. That's what's special about Smith shoes,
And my teacher, or the person who taught me how to make shoes, because he started working for us early on, he would get so mad at me. He was like, who taught you to do it like this? I didn't teach you how to do it like this. Why are you doing it like this? I don't know. And also it's like, and I kept trying to explain to him, I was like, look, I'm a big girl. Like when you have like a bathing suit or pantyhose, you learn how to make it stretch and move where you need it to move. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because for him, he makes a pattern. There's one pattern per size. And it fits perfectly and nothing moves. For me, you last it down, you start from the center, and then with the sandy, we're starting here, then we're going back here, we're going sideways. It's like we're in all these different spots. And he was like, why? He's like, it's like you're making a star pattern every time you last a shoe. But I don't know, for us it works, and we're able to work with like so many different kinds of leathers and still use the same patterns.
That is amazing.
Which is a huge time saver.
What's your favorite process? What's the favorite part of the process of shoemaking? Out of all the design to lasting to soling to even sewing, talking to clients?
I would say my most favorite part is when people reach out to us afterwards. Because for our shoes, they do give a lot of people a lot of agency, like I wanted to make sure we designed shoes that you can, because I travel so much,
Yeah.
it needed to be a pair of shoes that, it didn't look out of place if I was in Paris in a fancy place, but it also didn't look out of place if I was walking around the souks in Marrakesh. Like it needed to be something where it was just nice on its own. I didn't feel self-conscious. So
It
and
packs
then
slightly too. Like it packs, you can fold it.
yeah, because there's no stiffeners. A lot of times, especially the hair on leathers, you just fold it flat and stick it in a bag. So I'd say my favorite part is when customers tell us how meaningful our shoes have become to them, because it's like we make a product, we sell a product, and like what is that really? But when people reach out and they say like, look, I had broken my foot and I haven't been able to walk more than an hour in any shoes, and I found your shoes, and oh my God, I'm walking into places I can go. Or, I was traveling and we were just walking around all day and I loved exploring, but then, my boyfriend surprised me with a reservation at a really fancy restaurant, and she's like, I felt completely at home. It felt so nice. Like I didn't feel like and they were like, if I'm wearing tennis shoes all day long when I'm, touring or being a tourist, and then I go to a fancy restaurant, they would feel, and so things like that really do mean a lot.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's my favorite part, which is not actually shoemaking, but like
that's what keeps you really going too, I bet.
Yeah. So that's
and then
nice.
it also comes around, I guess I heard or read on your website, I think, that you get inspired by your travels. Is that something that like you always think about when you're designing?
Yeah. No, totally. Like it just kind of needs to make sense. Like, living in Europe, we're so modern in America. We don't even, realize it. And then you go to Europe and then the things like, their closets are small. And when your closets are small, you learn to be picky about what you have and what you let into the closet. So you don't accumulate a lot of stuff. Or, and because maybe you might inherit something from someone, people tend to stay where they're from. And so they'll be like, oh, this is my uncle's book from the 1600s. And you're like, who even has that? So those things definitely affect what I make. And so it kind of grounds it a little bit better, I think.
Yeah. What's your favorite style from the collection? And have you ever discontinued any style that you like started?
Oh, I've discontinued so much.
Oh, you have?
Oh,
I didn't
because
know
sometimes I'll do something and then I'm just like, I really like it, but then I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why is it here?
Is it like too similar to some other style or?
Yeah, it's not the similarities are not the things that put me off. It's like when things are kind of like too fussy for some reason, or if things are like, I'm in my late 40s now, and when I buy things, I need to be buying things as if I'm wearing it when I'm 55.
Right.
And so when you look at something and you're just like, oh God, but when I'm 55, I shouldn't be wearing that shoe. Then I'm like, okay, then why are we selling that shoe?
Right.
Yeah, why are we making that shoe if we don't want people to have it for the next 10 years?
Right.
So we really try to design to be as timeless as possible.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of shoes that went away, but my favorite is the sandy,
Definitely.
Yeah, because for me, I'm a big brown girl, and for flats, the offering for nice flats, the offering was kind of always a ballet shoe, like a flat like that. and whenever I put it on, I always felt kind of stupid, like it didn't make any sense for me, you know? And I put it on, and I remember telling my sister, I was like, I feel like a hippo wearing clothes. Like, I don't, like, it doesn't feel like me. So that one is definitely one that I, when I put it on, I feel like, you know, it makes sense for who I am. So that's definitely my favorite. And it was actually styled after a pair of shoes that were found in a bog. You know, it was from the year 300, I think it was.
Wow.
So someone had been wearing it, it got stuck in the mud and like got preserved really well. So when I looked at that shoe, a picture from a museum, I realized kind of how minimal a shoe could be.
It doesn't have to have all the things inside with a toe heel counter.
All of, and not just that, but like what made it practical, you know, like this person could walk miles and miles in it. Their feet could hold it in. But, you know, as you know, mass production dictates a lot of design. Like a machine can only do certain things.
Yep.
And I knew if I had a good design, chances are it would be knocked off. So if we were a handmade shoe company, we needed to do something that was difficult for a machine to do.
Right.
And that's kind of how the Sandy is. Like it's not easy for a machine
to do. I've seen like Urban Outfitters that has something similar, you know, they tried. And it's
they try, but like they have to make the opening on the outside, which for me, like this part of the foot is like the muffin top of the foot. You know, like this is pretty, but like for me, I'm like, this is the muffin top. Like, why does it open there? You know, but with machine lasting, you really need to, you know, and one of the good things about living in Europe is I've been able to tour quite a bit of factories, and some factories, you know, they're churning out thousands of shoes a day. And you get to look at these machines and how quickly they work. Yeah. And you know, it's great, but the machine can do certain things, but there's certain things that they can't. And so we really can do. Yeah. And it takes someone who knows leather and can feel it. Like, you know, from lasting our shoes, when you're lasting it, you're feeling with this hand. It seems like this hand is just holding it, but it's not. It's feeling what's happening and knowing how much to last and how much to pull before you're actually breaking the fiber. Right. And so, because if we overlasted our shoes, all the fibers would be broken. We take it off the last and it'd be like, you know, kind of like broken elastic. And then if we don't last it enough, it'll overstretch when someone's wearing it. Yeah. So it does take quite a bit of know-how to make sure you're lasting the shoes, you know, well.
Oh, that's so it's so good. You know, those shoes are the only open flats that my narrow heel can also like sit in too, because it hugs your feet so well. Usually
it's meant to really
like
hug it.
Yep, exactly. It is brilliant.
And because we don't have a heel counter, we really need to make sure we have a nice fit through here. Yeah. And you know, that means we need to make sure we're lasting the leather, because this is just a trimmed leather piece. So we need to make sure that the stretch has been taken out, but at the same time not broken. And it's funny. It looks so simple, but there's
simplest shoes are the hardest, you know.
Yeah,
there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, and then the leather, you really need to actually know leather well.
Yeah.
to know how to make a simple shoe.
Yeah. And
so that's my favorite.
how many times do you make a sample to get it like right, you feel like? But now I guess actually I should go back because your lasts are the same, but you know, how to get to the right last. Did it take you a long time to get to your right last? And then it
took like maybe 24 lasts.
Wow.
And working with a last modeler in Spain, who he's like, I don't know, third, fourth generation last modeler. He does thousands of lasts. So he knows what he's doing. It had nothing to do with him. It was just like
your style that you needed. Yeah.
Yeah, because even then, like certain things like, you know, how the wall is here, because I knew I wasn't gonna put any stiffener in the shoe, you know, the walls needed to be a little bit different than the other shoes that he makes. And also the toes needed to be a little bit different. The volume around the toe, you know, even like the little things of how it comes up there, it all needed to be addressed. And, you know, again, he speaks only Spanish, and like I can speak, but it's not, you know, 100%. So it was really a process to find the correct lasts.
It's you know, it's encouraging to hear also, like, you know, a lot of people do come, students as well as, you know, clients, and you know, they're surprised at how much time it takes to develop.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and you have the back work that you've done. You know.
Yeah, no, all of those things, like you know, even this last year that we just came out with, seems simple enough, right? But because we had built our business on this last, it needed to make sense with a new one. So volume-wise, things had to be similar. But at the same time, like for this, I think we went through 7 different models. And we already knew the shape that I knew the shape that I wanted. You know, I was like, it's going to be this shape. But then it was like, also, your feet, how you walk, get affected by your shoes. And when you're working with unlined leather, you know, some of the models that he was making for me, it kind of bananaed a little too much. So it's fine. It's a normal shape. You look at it, it looks normal. But because of that, you know, as I walked, I was pushing on the exterior of the shoe more than landing flat on the on the footprint. And so, of course, for our shoes, because they're not lined, if you're pushing too much in one area, you're going to overstretch that area. So I needed to try to figure out how to make a last where the walk was a little bit more natural. You know, it was just kind of, you're falling on the ground kind of thing. So
you made a pair on like each last that comes in. You wear test.
And luckily now, I have Joe here. So, you know, and because, you know, in a pandemic, honestly, shoes are not the best thing to sell. People are not leaving. So we have had quite a bit of time on our hands, because before, you know, every sample, of course, I made. But like now it's like Joe is making samples, and, you know, he's been with us now for, I think, four years. So, you know, I can make little tweaks in there, and then like a sample is done. And because I know exactly how our shoes fit me, I could tweak the last how I need it, which is how I don't understand how when people make shoes that they don't wear, because I find it really, really difficult, you know, like even the pitch here, you know, I needed to have him take it in a little bit so that it would feel the same as our other shoes. but then, also for business development, for anyone that's thinking about creating a shoe line, those are things you really need to develop correctly.
Yeah.
Or if not, for us, like something like 60% of our sales are repeat customers.
Yeah.
So if we were only counting on one sale because we're going to sell it to them and then and we're just going to get out there and cast a really wide net, but that's really difficult for a small brand to do.
Right.
So for us, we're really committed to making sure
that
everything
is consistent and
it's consistent and it works well, and someone that goes from one style to the other,
right,
we know how to guide them, because even though things are built on the same shoe last, if you change the style, things are going to fit differently. So we need to know how to guide them through that.
Yeah, definitely. And then speaking of guiding people through, there's a lot of materials and colors you have. Like, which one is your favorite in the coming season?
Well, of course, I'm always, I wear all black basically every day, as you know. So my shoes really get to be the ones to like stand out. And I really had to discipline myself. Like when you look at our website, we have that leather chart.
Yeah.
That chart kind of happened more for me than it did for other people, because then I was getting like multiple kind of colors that were similar but like slightly different. And so it was more to kind of discipline me and how I purchase. I would say one of my favorite leathers is this Ibiza Camello. Like it's a pull-up, but just a very slight pull-up. So you get these like natural shades. It's not a nude, but it's very neutral.
Right.
And so I don't know, I really like that leather a lot.
And is it hard to really, I mean, I think we might have talked about this a little bit with talking about vendors, but how long did it take you to find the right leathers? Like, the thickness to the quality to the tannery, how they work. A long time. A
lot, because it's so scientific, and what certain leathers, we're sold leather as far as thickness or weight. So in the US you might say 3 or 4 ounce. Here you go by millimeter. But when you're working with unlined leather, it could be the same thickness and it feels so completely different. And also when you tumble the leather, if you tumble it in a drum, if you tumble it by vibrating, if you iron it flat after, how much wax is in it, really affects the shoe. Like our glove skins, which feel very soft and thin to some people, is only maybe 0.4 millimeters different than our other leathers that feel very thick to some people. So even though the thickness is not really that different, they feel hugely different. We work a lot with tanneries in Tuscany, partly because we're too small to vet a ton of tanneries, and we want to, because we want to be responsible with how we source. So the consorzio in Tuscany, they do a lot of that, and there's so many tanneries there, and they've been vetted, and so we tend to source a lot from them, because we know at least that they're made in a special way.
Got it. And then, do you have a mantra that you live by? Motto or mantra? for your company or for your personal life?
I don't know. My mantra is always kind of like things can always get worse. Like my dad is always kind of, like the first house I bought, I was in New Orleans, and then Katrina hit like a month after.
Oh my goodness.
Like I went to graduate school, and then, at New York, and then 9/11 happened like
Oh my goodness.
2 weeks after. So between like, even when I moved out of my parents' house and I lived in LA, the LA riots happened. I went up to college, and then the earthquake in San Francisco. So my sister and everyone's always like, we're never going to live where you live. But I really learned that it's just, things happen. So COVID is so frustrating,
Yeah, it is.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I talk to my family in the Philippines. I talk to other people in other places, and I'm really, I feel really fortunate being where I am. You asked earlier why I moved to Barcelona. As a small maker and entrepreneur in the US, I needed healthcare, and I just couldn't afford that. Like the only way I could afford it is if our shoes were produced in a factory, or if I really scaled up and made things more expensive. And those things didn't sound like appealing things to me. So I figured like if I moved somewhere else and reduced my costs, then I would be able to continue doing this without having to put, without sacrificing or having to put so much pressure on the business. Like I love that, we can be busy, or like COVID happened, and I was like, okay, I saw businesses close, like Elizabeth Suzanne, who we made shoes for, who's so successful, and we have a lot of the same customers. They closed early on. I think it was April. That to me was a big shock, and I realized I was just like, look, whatever I do with this business, I don't want to put so much pressure on it to produce. Like I want to be able to be flexible with what we do. Like at the end of the day, everything goes to crap, I can still make shoes in my attic. Like that can still happen. And so that is kind of important for me and my business to always be looking at kind of the worst case scenario, and know that even the worst case scenario, it's fine.
Okay. All right. That's good.
It's like I'm making shoes. How bad can life be?
Right. Somebody asks, do you find that European versus USA customers have a preference for leather thickness or stiffness?
Oh, I would say no, but people are definitely committed to one or the other, because so we definitely have people who want really thick, kind of structured leather. And then we have other people who are like, they really want a glove skin leather.
Right.
So it's, so that's why we've kind of kept both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Because it's just, that's how, and it's, we're lucky since we're made to order, we can just cut it when we need it. If we don't need it and no one orders it, then it could sit there, and eventually it might be made into a bag, and then we'll sell that.
If you run out of a color, do you replenish again, or do you usually move on to a new color?
Depends, honestly. Depends how in love I am with it. There are some leathers that have really surprised me. Like we came out with Maine Violet, right? Such a punchy violet. And I didn't think it would do well. It sold out so quickly. Yeah. And then when we restock it, then people are like, eh. But like, so, sometimes it's like the moment that things are released, what people are feeling. I definitely think there's a collective aesthetic that people gravitate to. Like sometimes we'll have a week where it's a leather that hasn't sold, and in 1 week, half of our orders are that leather.
Right.
And so we don't know. And I thank goodness that I don't have to know.
Right.
I don't have to produce everything beforehand and
Right.
know how people react, because I have no clue.
Right.
I
And that's the beauty of made to order, really.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't think our business would exist without that model.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that's very
And,
good.
yeah. And you did it from the beginning. It's like such a foresight in a way. Like, back then I feel like, yeah.
And part of it is because, like, I love so many things, but I know I can't have them. And so, and then, working with Elizabeth Suzanne in the very beginning, nearly, kind of like set the tempo for a lot of my thoughts on what a shoe company could be.
Yeah.
So I realized how much less capital it takes, how much less waste it uses up if we make things to order.
Yeah.
And if we're really client driven, if we wait for a client to order a pair of shoes, it really makes a huge difference, in how they how much we can offer.
Yeah.
And, recently I was kind of on the flip side of that. I had a sweater from Lenver's fashion made, according to certain things that I wanted. I got a pot made. And it really does feel super special to have something that was made for you and made, according to certain changes that you needed. And you get really excited about it. And as a society, we don't get that so much anymore. Before, you wanted a dress, you had a dress made.
Yeah.
Now, you only want a dress once you see it.
Right. Right.
Once you see it, then you buy it. And that kind of creativity resting on the people that wear it has kind of gone away. And I really enjoy it, and I hope it makes a comeback.
Yeah. And you're totally pioneering that. Thank you so much. If you had all the resources available to you and no worries in life, what kind of shoes would you be making, and for who? Would you be making same as what you do now?
I think, honestly, the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that might just be a preservation of, like, sanity to think that. But I really think the same. Like, I like what we do, and I love that, like, we have styles that have been there for 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, most people are just like, oh, don't you get tired of it? It's like, no, every time I see an order for that same style, I think, like, wow, that is really good, that it was a good enough design to keep. So I would say, no, I would love to have all our makers under one roof, because, like, we have, like, you guys in Hoboken, we have Rebecca, and then, we have Joe here, and I'm here. I'd love to have it all together, but at the same time, like, one of the things that was really important for me for this business was that people can be flexible with when and where they work.
Right.
When COVID hit, Rebecca went to, her parents' home, and we had some lasts over there. She took certain leathers, and, like, she worked on it there. And because we rely on so little machinery, she was able to make shoes from there and send it off.
Yeah.
And so so I don't know, that's a little bit of a catch-22, but,
Yeah, you want to keep it small in a sense, enough mobility.
Yeah.
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 Then
And of the mindset that the bigger it is, kind of the bigger the problems
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
saw it with some companies,
Yeah.
you know, recently, how hard it can be at a
Yeah.
certain point.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're the size that we are, and that I'm glad that I'm still the one that answers every email.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. I'm fine with that. I can go on like this. Like someone asked me the other day, like, what are you planning on doing when you're retiring? And I'm like,
You don't need to
I'm
retire.
retired. As far as I'm concerned, I'm retired, and like, you know, that's fine.
So you think like I always ask like 3 to 5 to 10 years, what do you think you might be doing or you want to be doing? Would you think still shoemaking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. I don't really see, like, I don't know. There's nothing else. It's funny because my previous career, I was also always thinking about the other things I could be doing.
When you retire or
Yeah. But with I don't know, with this business, I'm happy where I am. Like I'm happy that my costs are lower here in Barcelona, my personal costs, so I don't have to push the company. I can travel, I can, like when I go to see tanneries, sometimes I fly there just for the day. I leave in the morning, I come back at night.
Wow.
The
close, the hands reach. Yeah,
everything is so close, and then every country has their own also their own tradition of shoemaking. I went to Portugal, you meet shoemakers there. And then I go to Greece and you meet shoemakers there. And you go to Italy and you meet shoemakers there. Everyone's doing completely different shoes, and they are doing it a lot of times in the simplest way. And we get so bogged down with making shoes in, what I call like a classic English way, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to have a pair of Goodyear welted shoes. Fantastic. But there's so many other methods. I go to Marrakesh and like I'm sitting there with a guy who's making shoes the same way they made shoes, I don't know, hundreds of years. And they're doing the edges like, they're doing the edges of the leather, and to seal them, they're using like, I don't know, he was speaking Arabic, but I think it was bleach is what he was saying, but that's how they seal and close the edges. That and an old bone. And then another one was like, his glue brush, it was completely just a stick with hair on it. And he was like, oh, let me get you a nicer brush. And he walks around the corner and cuts hair off a donkey and like puts it on with a rubber band, and that's what he's gluing the shoes with. Right. There's so many different methods out there to not, for shoemakers, it would be really nice for people not to get hung up on like,
has to be like this and like
it has to be like that. So I'm very proud of what we do, and I think that it's influenced by history. I think it's influenced by different cultures, but at the same time we try to keep it kind of modern aesthetically.
Yeah. It comes through in your designs, definitely. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. That's the goal.
Yes. And then what's the practice you would keep that you adapted during COVID and then that you would continue? And what do you think would change?
Gosh, the practice that we kept, I mean, nothing really changed so much. One of the things that I think, if, everyone is hurt financially. So what does that mean for me design-wise? For me design-wise, I had to think about like, okay, so how do we make what people have better?
Yeah.
Without it costing them, without necessarily selling a pair of shoes. Right. So then, we came out with those shearling, those reversible shearling and leather inserts. Yeah. Because then, people could wear them in their shoes. Their shoes kind of feel brand new and fresh inside. Yeah. And at the same time, also, it takes you through more seasons because you can wear the leather side in summer and the shearling side in winter.
Sure, yeah.
So I had to really think of those things much more than I would have maybe without COVID. Without COVID,
Right.
you just keep making shoes and you keep selling them.
Right.
But I really had to think about how we were actually going to improve people's lives without things costing
Seeing them more.
so much.
Right.
And I think that will continue. And that's also the vein in which the sandals came out of. We had been working on a sandal sole for so long, and it kind of just wasn't going right. We worked on the last for a long time. I mean, this was like a 2-year process of developing the last to get it right.
Yeah.
And also developing the sole to get it right.
Yeah.
And so when we did that, trying to make sure the design was something that was going to make that sandal more affordable.
Right.
Now, it's not cheap because we're not a, mass production factory,
Right.
but, it's nearly half of what our shoes are, with a lot of the same materials and the same workmanship.
Yeah.
So I think those kind of things will continue past COVID, and I'm glad that was kind of the kick in the butt that we needed. And we're actually going to end up offering our shearling insoles in all our shoes. Oh, well, not all our shoes, sorry. In a lot of our boots. And so starting next month, like if you order a pair of boots, it'll automatically have that. So you can choose the wool side or the leather side, depending on what you want to do. So it just kind of makes the shoes
more versatile in a way, I guess.
More versatile and a better value, and so that, changes like that. And hopefully I can think of more things like that work. Yeah. But, it honestly, like moving from the US to here, it would have been difficult to make that happen in the US. Like here, I was able to call the guy who has a friend who, they have a, sheep shearling, like not far, like an hour and a half away. So he was able to supply me the shearling because I didn't want to do felted wool because I found that falls apart over time. So I really wanted to use shearling that was still attached to the hide.
Right.
And then, our guy who makes our soles in Portugal, I had to be like, okay, so I want them backed with Italian leather. And he's like, well, we don't do insoles. I'm like, but I know you can do insoles. I know you have the machines. And he was like, okay, we'll do them. And so, they put them together for us so that they could fit into our shoes. And and that's, so hopefully I keep thinking of things like that, but it's important as a business for me to always be thinking in that direction.
Cool. And do you take apprentices? I mean, the COVID times, not really, but how long does it take to train someone? And would you want more people eventually in your space?
I never took apprentices. Like there's enough steps in our shoes that we end up kind of teaching people. They might start off in different parts, but we pay them to teach them. Apprentices is one of those things that's so hard with shoemaking, because for me, an apprentice is there to learn. It's like their college, right? So they want to learn everything, which means many times in shoemaking, an apprentice pays the people who teach them so that they can sit there and practice and learn, and people stop and take the time. So I don't, partly because I don't know every type of shoemaking, and I think that people should learn from people who really know. So we never take an apprentice. We just don't.
Yeah, no, totally. When I was talking with Isabel too, we were talking about the dream girl, shoe girl trip that we would love
Yeah,
to do. A
that we
long time
planned
ago, we planned
before.
before. Can we
Yeah,
still keep that on our minds and
yeah.
try one day, maybe when the COVID, the vaccines are out and
Yeah.
when
I mean,
this,
I think that there's so much great information to share.
yeah,
Like on our feed, we share other people's shoes whenever. It doesn't matter to me at all because I think that as long as we can let people know that there are many types of shoes, the pie is so big. And right now, handmade shoes maybe take up 1/10 of 1% of that pie. And sometimes when I see small shoemakers kind of like competing with each other, or it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
doesn't make any sense. Yeah. No,
You
I agree.
know, it's like it's so much better if we band together and pool our knowledge, pool our people. Because as you know, like for me, once I started making shoes and once I started appreciating handmade things,
Yeah.
I mean, I went from like in the film industry, I'd work as a shopper and I'm in stores all day long. Things are still appealing to me there. Once I started liking handmade things, I can't look at that stuff anymore. Like
I don't
it
go
has
shopping.
zero
Yep.
it has zero
Zero
appeal to
appeal.
me.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless something is comfortable, like maybe if it's like a sweatshirt that's like really cozy, like unless it's that, it has no appeal to me. So I think it's important for shoemakers, leather makers to always kind of be working together to try to turn the public, you know, taste to handmade.
There's like that conference. I saw your actually photo you sent of your studio. Now you and I think Joe and
Oh, good. They
yeah,
posted it. We
yeah,
weren't sure.
yeah. I'm still
Okay.
going through their videos, but something like that. But like, I would love to like really meet in person again.
Yeah, yeah,
One
yeah.
day, a
No,
couple more years, maybe. I don't know.
to time it with going to Linia Pele
Mm.
to source anything and everything. And also to meet up with Diane Becker
Better,
in
yeah.
Tuscany because I really like the tanneries there. Would be great to tour together and have some creative time in Tuscany would
Yeah,
be really
amazing.
nice.
Yeah, and I
But
think
this is like a month-long
yeah,
holiday is basically what we've planned.
yeah, and around work and leather and shoes, maybe we can make
Yeah,
it happen. Let's both
makes
see.
total sense.
Yeah,
Makes total sense.
it is.
So
It's just a
I
dreamy
think,
dream, but
yeah,
one day. I mean, it's
one,
hard to take off your business hat and work hat. I mean, you wear so many hats that really taking the
yeah,
time off is really hard.
yeah,
But
and that's where I'm lucky with this business. Also, I started it off specifically with traveling in mind, and so it's kind of like it's meant to travel, So being in Europe, like you go on vacation in August. You just do. You go for a month somewhere, and typically we go to like some Greek island. Now I'm working the whole time. I'm on this Greek island, but I get to be in the Greek island for like a few weeks, and that's fantastic.
yeah,
So
fantastic. Yeah, the balance, work-life balance, you call it, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to kind of create an animal that makes sense for what you want.
See what you're gonna come up with next, but also just want to see, like, I want another pair of sandies, and I just haven't been
Mhm.
able to choose the leather that I want. It's a little,
Yeah,
yeah, I have to
it's
like,
a lot.
it is a lot
Yeah,
to choose
yeah,
from.
yeah,
So
yeah.
slowly, one by one. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, thank you so much for, taking the time today to share
Oh, thanks
your
for having
craft.
me.
And I think for people who really don't know, I mean, I'm sure everybody, who's seeing this knows, but really to check out how different your shoes are from any other shoes that's out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot because you see a lot of shoes.
I do see a lot of shoes. Yeah. But
I see a lot of
keep
shoes.
it going and let's stay healthy. And when we're out of this, let's try to see each other in person.
Sounds good. It's a plan.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so
Okay,
much. All right.
good. Bye. Bye.
Bye.